Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 4-3 show. I'm Ryan Blank, and once again, we are without Pat. Getting lazy, fell asleep. Yeah, he had a long weekend in Vegas. But I have the two better co-hosts I could ask for with Parker Dunn and Dominic Stern. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Good. It's been a long week, but excited to talk about some sports with you guys.
Doing all right. Yep.
It's
Dom, I love how you mentioned it's been a long week and it's the first day of the week.
I mean, just like the past week has been a long time.
That's definitely true.
How
long were you here till yesterday, Dom? Why don't you tell the viewers?
I was here till 2:30, long night, and then I had to get back here at 8:45. So
Odell is working you, man.
Yep. It's March.
Well, not yet. Got about 4 more hours.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, it's March.
Yes, the best month of the year. All right. First order of business, let's go to the NBA.
How are you doing, Ryan? You just gonna skip over that part?
No, I don't really matter as much as you guys. I'm just the one that drives the ship, but I'm exhausted. Mentally and physically exhausted. So I might try to actually get more than 3 hours of sleep tonight. Who knows? All right, let's get into it. NBA. This Harden and B duo has been terrific so far, even though it's just a couple of games. Do you guys think they can keep it up? And what do you think of the duo so far?
I do think they can. I mean, these are two of the best players in the league. You put them together, you're going to get good things out of them because while Embiid's a center that's, he's probably the most relied upon center to have the ball in his hands in the post. You can get away with that since, they're such drastically different positions. Harden can control the ball, bring it down the court, and get him the ball when he needs to. And, he's done that. It's a 2-game sample size, but they've looked really good so far. And, that's what you want to see if you're a Sixers fan. So it looks like a good trade. I thought that the Sixers were going to come out the better team because of that trade. And so far they're back up and, they've looked good. And that's all you can ask for because, you have one of the best scorers ever. And you have Joel Embiid, who in his own right is going to become one of the best scorers, definitely one of the best scoring centers. He's averaging just over 29 points, leading the league in average points per game. So, they're as advertised. So they're going to be a really tough duo to beat.
Dom, over to you.
Yeah, no, I've been a believer in the 76ers of the past. And now that Ben Simmons is gone, and I don't want to say I'm like a Ben Simmons stan, but there's nothing wrong with not shooting the basketball. Obviously, it is not translated.
You're just saying that because you can't shoot.
Well, that is true. That's not why I'm saying that, though. But I've just been a supporter of Ben Simmons because he plays great defense. He can run the pick and roll really well. And, that's – you don't need that much more out of a point guard. Obviously, if they can shoot, that's better. You get James Harden, who can run the pick and roll extremely well. And, that's what we've really seen him and Joel Embiid do. And then Harden can obviously shoot off of that. And when Harden wants to, he can play defense. He's always been a high steal guy. And when he tries to play defense, he's a good defender.
Yeah. I think the best thing about this trade is that they didn't have to give up Tyrese Maxey, which I know that was a big piece. So having him there as well, but this duo's looked fantastic so far. And like you said, on the pick and roll, we knew what the potential for that could have been. But that 2-man offense look with those two has been dominant. And Harden, when he has that co-star alongside with him, especially when it's someone like Embiid who can score and needs the ball a lot, like Parker said, he's going to get a lot of assists. He's going to find ways to be more of a playmaker, and that's what you've seen a lot as I believe he had 16 assists against the Knicks just on Sunday. So he looked really good. That duo's looking really good, and I think that for the Sixers, this is what you wanted. It's good for them to get out of that Ben Simmons era and all the saga there and turmoil that has come from all that, and then to get Harden, who's motivated to have a fresh start and be where he really wants to be, it seems like. Because remember, the Sixers were, I believe, one of his top, if not his top destinations last year when he wanted to trade from the Rockets. So getting to the place where he really wanted to be, I think it's just great for him and for his motivation aspect as well. But those two have looked really good so far. They're feeding off each other extremely well. Do you guys have anything else you want to add about that?
I just think they're going to be really tough to beat. I think that's what it comes down to. And the East is the best it's been probably the last decade. So I think the playoffs are going to just be absolutely incredible because there's not a single team that's going to enter that playoff matchup where it's a surefire thing. You know, there are so many teams you look at where whether it's the Sixers, whether it's the Bulls, whether it's the Heat, whether it's still the Nets, even though, you know, they've been on their skid and things haven't been going well without KD. You know, when they're healthy, they're going to be up there. There's just so many teams. The Bucks, I mean, you name it. Like, there's so many teams. And the Cavs, they're going to be a lot of really good matchups. And there's going to be some really good teams that, you know, had they been in the Western Conference, which usually it's the opposite argument, they could have maybe gotten to the second round, but not going to be the case. So I think there's going to be a lot of deep series, a lot of meaningful games, game 6s, game 7s. And I can't wait for the playoffs to start. Honestly, I just wanted to start already because I think it's going to be electric.
Dom, anything else?
No, I mean, there's obviously still a lot of basketball to play left. We did see the Jazz knock off the Suns yesterday, and that was a pretty exciting game. Had that game on here while I was down here for 16 and a half hours. So I got to watch a little bit of that. I mean, the Jazz offense is really good. They got some shooters to go along with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. They're going to be a fun team to watch, and be interesting to see if the Suns can hold on to that lead that Chris Paul and company built without Chris Paul.
Yeah, and that's another thing.
They're more than capable of it, but
yeah, that's another thing we'll get into. But before we get into the Suns and CP3, I want to flip the script here from Harden over to the Nets with Simmons, and now New York is lifting their mask mandate, which now and their vaccine mandate, which is now giving Kyrie the opportunity to play home games now. How does that help the Nets? And then getting guys like KD back shortly, and then also adding a guy like Simmons. What's your guys' outlook for this team in the final stretch of the season and going into the playoffs?
Well, it's big that they're making that move now because making that move allows these guys to build some chemistry. KD still isn't back yet, but it looks like he's nearing a return probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It seems like from what they're saying, you know, you get a guy like that back. You get Kyrie, those two can, you know, maybe gel a little bit because they haven't had the chance to do that. I mean, the trio, and this is dating back to with Harden, no longer there, but that trio only played 16 games together. So Kyrie and KD alone have not had the chance to play too many. So I think that a big thing is just going to be them building that continuity, getting some chemistry because they haven't had the chance to do it. It seems ridiculous. Obviously, they're able to do it in practice, but that's not the same thing as simulating a game. So seeing those guys on the court together, Ben Simmons with his back soreness, being able to get into physical shape again, basketball shape, game shape, that's going to be huge because he's got to be able to be on the court with those guys. They got to see how he fits because he's a huge liability. You can't space the floor as well as you want to when he's on the court. So how he's able to be that facilitator and how Kyrie and KD are just going to be okay with playing off ball is what they're going to have to do because otherwise getting Simmons means absolutely nothing because the only way he's valuable besides his defense is if he's the one dishing it out to these guys. And that just doesn't really suit how they play. So I'm really intrigued by how it all plays out because I think that they do have a lot of shooters around him. It's definitely one of the best scenarios to make up for his lack of shooting with guys like those two and Seth. But I don't know. I mean, that's going to be the biggest thing. Just how can these two and how this big three can gel together.
Well, and the one thing that the Sixers have that the Nets don't have is time. The Sixers are the current 3 seed, so they're going to make the playoffs and they're going to miss the play-in games, which of course you have to be a top 6 seed to do so. I mean, they're only 2.5 games or 4 games in front, but I mean, it's safe to believe that the way that James Harden and Joel Embiid are looking, they're not going to fall down. But the Nets, they have to go because they're currently 3.5 games out of avoiding the play-in game, and they're only 4 games in front of the Wizards for missing the playoffs. So they don't have time to get things going. They're going to have to mix and match Durant, Irving, Simmons, all those guys, and make sure that they do gel, like Parker said, in order to make the playoffs and ideally avoid playing in those play-in games because that's the last thing that you want. And when you look at it, they absolutely have the talent to get up in front of the Celtics for that 6 seed. Maybe if the Cavaliers start to fall off a little bit, although there's been no signs of that going to happen, that can happen because the Nets are that talented. But it's up to a very young and inexperienced head coach in Steve Nash to get that going. So that's going to be a big storyline to watch.
Yeah, and Parker, we've talked about this, that one of the key pieces in that trade was Seth Curry. And I think that with the injuries to Joe Harris this year and his inconsistency shooting the basketball, getting a guy like Seth Curry to surround those three of Kyrie, Katie, and Simmons is getting them some shooters, and they just got a shooter right there in Seth Curry, who's a terrific shooter. Nothing like his brother, but
he is actually very similar. Obviously,
that's the same caliber.
no, but he is really good though.
Yeah, they're both great shooters, and I think that's a key thing is getting some shooters around them. But Parker, you mentioned that it's key to get the ball in Simmons' hands and let his playmaking do a lot of the talking because we know the value he has on defense. He's a terrific defender, but he's a great playmaker too. And I think there might be some butting heads there between he and Kyrie because they're both good playmakers. But how does Steve Nash get them to mesh to where they can feed off each other very well? I think that's the biggest challenge from those two. Is getting them to split being that on-ball, off-ball type relationship because both guys, if they run it well, can be very effective in their playmaking.
Yeah, I mean they're built like a My League team or like a My Team, depending on which NBA 2K one you prefer. But like they really are though, because like talent, like you could argue they have more than anybody except for like the bench, the depth's not there. But as far as the starting five, you can make that argument. And I'll definitely entertain the thought of it. But it's just I don't know. Having dominant ball handlers play together, it's worked in the past. CP3 and James Harden are a great example of it. But both those guys can shoot. Ben Simmons can't. The only thing he can do is facilitate. So I think the success of this team comes down to Kyrie's willingness. If he's willing to off ball, if he's willing to move without the ball in his hands, I think they can have a lot of success, move up in the seed rankings, and be a legit playoff team. They can compete for a title. But if Kyrie doesn't, and he's not exactly the guy that shows he's really about that and about being unselfish, I don't know. But it's going to come down to Kyrie though at the end of the day.
Dom, anything else from you?
No, I mean I touched on my Nets thoughts. I mean I think they're going to get it done, but I think Steve Nash is going to put himself in a very tricky spot.
Yeah,
it's not his fault, but he's just an inexperienced head coach that has a lot of personalities who are talented that may or may not fit together.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He doesn't have a lot of time to figure it out.
No, and I think that's going to be what is the difference maker for the Nets is how much can those guys get on the court but before the playoffs as them three? Because you saw the trio of Harden, Katie, and Kyrie. They played 16 total games together in over a year. So it's got to be key for them three to get on the court, establish some chemistry playing together before the playoffs. Otherwise, they could be in some trouble a little bit there. But let's move on back and get to the Western Conference and the current one seed, the Suns. Chris Paul is out for at least 6 to 8 weeks. It was announced right during All-Star weekend. And this is a big loss for the Suns, losing Chris Paul, who Stephen A. had as one of his top 5 MVP candidates. So what do you think the Suns have to do in order to keep their 1 seed, knowing that they're not going to have Chris Paul for at least a month and a half to 2 months?
Well, they need to win games.
I mean, it's simple. They just have to not do what they did against Utah, where you have possessions where you throw the ball away. You can't do that. And, their schedule is really easy. I took a look at it, because the huge comparison here is them and the Warriors, because the Warriors are the 2 seed. They're the team that realistically only has the chance to pass them up. I mean, the Grizzlies are right behind the Warriors as well. Technically, that's out of the domain, like it could happen. But realistically, it's between the 1 and the 2 with those two. And the Warriors' schedule is significantly more difficult. So I do think the Suns are going to hold on to it. So they just have to take care of some easy opponents that they're going to have coming up. Devin Booker has kind of transitioned to a little bit of a facilitator role. He's racking up, I believe, 7 or more assists the last 3 games in his absence. So he's doing exactly what he has to do to make up for it. He's giving some other guys the ball and just moving it around. And that's where you most feel the absence of Chris Paul. That's his role on the team. So him sacrificing a little bit of scoring, dishing the rock, getting guys like Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, or getting it down low to DeAndre Ayton, that has been huge for the team so far. And I think that really, as long as he can keep doing something similar to that stat line, something like 25 and 6, I don't see them losing too many games because they are a really well-rounded team.
Dominic?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important that Mikal Bridges steps up on the defensive end. He's their main on-ball defender. because the best way to account for losing a leader on offense is to step up defensively because you have the same pieces defensively. Because Chris Paul is a good defender, but he's not like the best defender. There's a reason Mikal takes on whoever the Suns need him to. So I think if Bridges can step up on the defensive end, they have guys on the wings who can hit threes. Crowder, Bridges, Johnson, those guys can all do it. It's going to have to Booker and Payne to run the offense. And I still think the Suns have built a strong enough cushion to sustain the blows that they're going to take. And like Parker mentioned, a weak second half schedule.
Yeah, for the Suns, I think another thing is their past couple of games they haven't had Cameron Payne, which I think is also going to have an effect if he has to miss a little bit more time because he's been their kind of sixth man off the bench and also getting Landry Shamet back as well. So the Suns have some depth to where they can have Booker, like you said, Parker, take on that facilitator role and find guys to fill up the scoring aspect to replace Paul in that sense with Shamet and Payne. But they got to get those guys back. And I think once you get those guys back, it'll be a different Suns team because, like you both said, it's an easier schedule to end the season. They set themselves up very well. So if there's a time for Chris Paul to miss, it's right now. But they still got to take care of business, find a way to make up for the loss of Chris Paul and use their defense because they're one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. So
Yeah,
that's what I see.
Shamet is back. He was back in the Utah game, so that's good as far as depth goes. But and it's not even only just that with the Suns. The reason why they're going to hold on, one, it's because they're a really good team. But look at the teams below them. I mean, the Grizzlies are just pretty far away. And if you look at the Warriors, who are, like I said, are really the only threat, and not a very big one considering how big the lead is. They're without Draymond. They're still without Wiseman, but the key focus is they're without Draymond. So I mean, both teams dealing with injuries to either their most valuable or second most valuable player on the team. So I think it kind of just balances out. And that's why they're just going to hang on to it. And that's just going to be what it is. Suns are going to get the home court advantage out of the playoffs. And all the other teams below them, like the Warriors or like the Grizzlies, the Nuggets, see what they can do.
And Parker, you mentioned injuries. And a lot of teams are feeling it right now. Who is another team for you guys personally that is kind of shaky with injuries that you feel like it's going to really struggle getting over that hump until they get back and get their players back healthy?
Well, as far as a team that's injured, I mean, the Warriors have a team that during their championship years, injuries, besides Steph with the occasional ankle injuries, like there weren't too many big ones. I mean, you look at the 2016 finals, Steph was hurting, he wasn't 100%, but typically they were fine. That was till 2019. All of a sudden, KD, who's obviously not with the team, he goes down, and then Klay goes down. And Klay was a guy that he was the Iron Man of the team. He had never gotten injured. He never missed more than a game, never missed back-to-back. And he suffered 2 insane injuries back-to-back, second time with his rehab. So they're a team that all of a sudden that's the biggest question mark for the team because I think talent-wise they're the best in the league. But once you take into account the fact that Draymond's going to come back, but who knows how he's doing. I mean, they're saying that he's not going to come back until he's 100%, but that could kind of throw off the rhythm a little bit. We've seen how the team looks, especially offensively, without him on the court. James Wiseman's been the biggest mystery ever all year. It's like, when's he going to come back? When's he going to come back? Nobody knows when he's going to come back. And then Klay finally came back, too, after his absence. And that's the guy that, for the longest time wasn't able to play in back-to-back games, still trying to get in basketball shape, trying to be careful with him. So they're a really interesting team with those injuries. So I think a lot of it relies on that. Other teams are the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard. We haven't heard much about him, but the idea is maybe him and Paul George, who's also injured, could come back onto the court at the same time. And all of a sudden, as a lower end seed, that's really dangerous. If they end up being like a play-in team, that's a scary matchup if those two come back, even if they're not 100%, because they're just that good. And the talent for the play-in game is going to be relatively low, all things considered. And then another one, Nuggets, Jamal Murray, and then all of a sudden, Michael Porter Jr. He was rumored to potentially be able to come back pretty soon, start conditioning. So the Western Conference is riddled with injuries that there's a lot of teams where we don't know what they're going to look like. If they didn't get to full strength, it's a whole nother ballgame.
I got nothing else to add. I think Parker touched on it all.
Yeah, and Parker, you mentioned lastly, that's the team I was looking at is the Nuggets. Because this year they've really struggled with injuries. They lost Jamal Murray late last year to a torn ACL, and then Michael Porter Jr. has never really been able to stay consistently healthy throughout his career so far. So getting those two back, I think, is really going to help that team because Jokic has been doing it all. And getting some co-stars back, Aaron Gordon's been solid for him, but they need their point guard back. They need that other guy there as well with Porter Jr. Once those two come back, that team is one of the best in the West and a scary team that you don't want to face when they're fully healthy. So you make a great point there. Now, let's get off of the NBA. Dom, it is almost March, and you are our residential college basketball guy. You're on the Bonanza.
Yeah.
How excited are you for March basketball?
Well, I need the basketball to come, and I especially the tournament to come really fast because it's been a long season. It's been super exciting, and this time of year is really when March Madness starts. A lot of people consider it to be March Madness when the NCAA tournament starts, but it really starts when these conference tournaments start. All these guys have worked their entire lives to get a chance to play for the national title, and it starts this week for every single one of them. Now, some teams don't have anything to play for in these upcoming weeks because their resumes are good enough to where they could be at-large teams, but for the 300 other teams that aren't going to be at-large teams, they have to play for their lives. And if they lose just one game, their season's over. And for the seniors who this year don't have an extra year of eligibility, their playing careers are over. So you get to see a lot of really passionate and really high-intensity basketball.
Dom, I know this year your team has been the Jacksonville Dolphins.
Oh, dude, the Dolphins, baby. Let's go.
Do you think they'll win the ASUN tournament championship?
Well, I mean, I took off a polo shirt, had a Jacksonville Dolphins t-shirt on, and I made a dolphin noise on Twitter saying that I think they're going to win the ASUN. So, I mean, I would hope they win the ASUN because if not, I mean, if they lose in that first round matchup, I'm going to be extremely upset. Being completely honest, I've only watched this team play once. It was on the bus ride, or not a bus, but it was in our family's van ride up to Santa Barbara to celebrate Christmas with our relatives. And it was the only game on. And I'm like, this team's actually pretty good. They're on the road at Pitt and they're fighting. Like, I'll look more into them like when I'm not in our family van. And they play really hard on defense. They shoot the three ball really well and they rebound well. Those are things that can carry you a long way in March because you're limiting second chances. You're going to induce runs by making threes and playing defense. Defense is always sustainable, and you can start making shots, and you can get on a transition on defense, and that opens up your offense. So I absolutely think they can win the ASUN. They're currently plus 1,200 to win the ASUN. Those are not favorable odds, but fourth best odds in the conference.
Dom, for you, which conference tournament are you most excited to watch? Parker, I want to ask you the same question too in a minute.
I think it's the OVC tournament just because Murray State has only lost twice this year, one of which was Memphis. Or sorry, they beat Memphis. The other one was to Auburn. And then I think it was Eastern Tennessee State, which is a solid loss. It's not a good loss, but they're going to be a tournament team. And there are several other good teams in the OVC tournament who are not going to be at-large teams. Belmont, Morehead State, who won the tournament last year, who could steal a bid. And this was, of course, the first bid to get punched every single year. Championship's going to be on Saturday. I think it's going to be a really fun tournament to follow.
For you.
I know of certain schools, but I'm not very good with conferences, especially some of the mid-major ones, a little bit smaller school.
We're talking about the Summit League today, Parker.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to admit it. I don't know my stuff. I couldn't talk to you the way I can about other big name teams, like most people. But I feel like the SEC is going to be really interesting because I ever since the Final Four run with Auburn, granted it's a completely different team. I just kind of lingered towards them. I really liked them, and part of it was for bias reasons because I had picked them. They were the 5 seed. I picked them to beat New Mexico State, and that was one of those 5-12 ones I'll never forget. I was so scared. I have never gone back and forth more than that game, and then they barely won it. And I kind of just rode with them. I was so happy. Charles Barkley was going crazy, as an alumni there. So I think that they can be a team that definitely wins that conference. They were number one in the AP poll for a little bit for the first time in school history. which was super cool for them to finally accomplish. Really good team last couple years. And then another Kentucky. Kentucky's been really good this year too. They just lost recently, but they're another team that I think can shake some things up. And it's a program which, I mean, kind of been a little bit on the decline, still bringing in the recruits, but they hadn't been having the same success the last couple of years. And they're not the only one. There's been plenty of blue bloods. We could say the same thing. Duke, same situation. Coach K's final season. Now they look good. But, not to talk about Duke and the ACC, but I'm really looking forward to the SEC, though. I think that that's going to really be a fun one to see how that plays out with some big implications for the higher end seeds.
I say this tournament every single year, and it's the Big Ten tournament. It is so hard to predict and think of who is going to win that tournament. Because when you look at the teams, you automatically look at Purdue, who has Jaden Ivey, who I think is going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft this upcoming year. Well, this year, sorry. And I think that they're not going to win it. They have had times when they have looked very vulnerable. But again, there's another team like Wisconsin who has also looked vulnerable, and they rely on Johnny Davis, who has been terrific this year. And then I think he's going to be an All-American, which we can get into that stuff later.
He could be National Player of the Year is what he could be.
Do you really think he could be?
Absolutely.
Really?
Dude, Wisconsin's got a chance of being a 2 seed while being projected to be like a fringe tournament team. And he's far and away their best player. He's practically their entire offense. He could absolutely be National Player of the Year. I mean, I think that Tshiebwe is the favorite right now.
Yeah.
But I think it's a 2-way race with several players not too far behind.
Three-way race with Ochai Agbaji.
He's not there at the top, but he's behind them.
He's not. He's in the conversation, but he's not there with them.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But also Wisconsin has Brad Dixon, though.
Oh, come on.
When he gets hot, he
Come on,
is
Ryan.
an elite shooter.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good shooter, but
He's not as versatile of a scorer like Johnny Davis,
No.
which is evident. But the Big Ten tournament is going to be really interesting for me. I think that also I have a lot of family connections with that, with my twin brother at Indiana, my mother with Michigan, and then my grandmother with Nebraska. So that's definitely a tournament that I watch every year. But I think it's just one of those pre-March Madness craziness tournaments that just get you even more amped up for that. So that's always a tournament to watch out for.
Mhm.
But Dom, we got into it a little bit, and you said Tshiebwe's your favorite for National Player of the Year.
yeah, I'd lean towards Tshiebwe just because he really opens up that team. He's a good rim protector on defense. Their defense has been the best in the nation this year. Kentucky currently second in KenPom, but 21st in defense. Offensive-minded team, but he's far and away the best rebounder in the nation. It's not even close. He's averaging a double-double nearly every single game. He's averaging, let's see, on the season, Tshiebwe is averaging takes a little bit to find these stupid stats, but I mean, just like going off his rebounds, 18, 16, 14, 15, 19, 14, 15, 17, 14, 22, 14, 14, 12, 13,
What a monster.
17, 13, and then 8. So every single game in 2022, he has had 10 plus rebounds, and there's only been 2 games
That's
or 3 games since that time where he had less than 10 points.
Yeah, and I believe he's had 11 straight double doubles or something like that.
Yeah, he's had a double-double in every game since
Insane.
January 19th.
I remember watching him at West Virginia, and I hated it because he was just beating up on KU.
He's a menace.
And then, goes to Kentucky, and then Kentucky whoops KU on their own floor. So, someone that I would like to
Run
see
from it.
get out of.
Credit.
get-
Destiny still arrives.
Yeah, I just want him to get out of college basketball so he stops hurting the Jayhawks a little bit. But Parker, is it Tshiebwe for you, or do you see another guy that you think is worthy of National Player of the Year?
I mean, there's some good ones, but I think the names we've mentioned, those top 3 guys, I think just, hearing those numbers from Tshiebwe, I mean, those are like video game numbers, and he's only in college. You don't see guys typically sustain those kind of numbers, to consistently be able to do that. And it's not like, it's one crazy double OT game where he got like 18 or 19, and then like the next game he gets like 8 or 9. Like, that's unbelievable consistency. So he's able to go get those boards. And, getting second chance points goes a really long ways. And if Kentucky wants to have success, he's going to have to continue to do that because this is a really good tournament team. And having him leading the way, he's been a big reason why they've kind of turned things around this season and why they look so good. And he's going to be one of those guys that makes that SEC tournament so fun to watch. Him and Jabari Smith going at it, two big men. I can't wait.
I think that's a guy that we forgot to mention is Jabari Smith.
He's really
He's
good.
been fantastic this year for Auburn.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
not going to be National Player of the
Yeah,
Year.
no,
but
no,
he's
no.
a top-
He's definitely in the
top 5 pick.
conversation, but I don't
No,
think
he's
he's
not.
there yet.
No, he'll be a top pick in the draft,
Yeah,
but he won't be.
The Auburn offense doesn't run through him, and it doesn't run through
Mm-mm.
Sheboy, but I think that's what makes it even more impressive that he's putting up this kind of
Yeah.
numbers.
I
Yeah.
think that Sheboy is definitely the favorite just because of all the things he does. Dom, you mentioned it. Rim protector, terrific rebounder, can score down low. He's a beast, and that's the only way you can really shake it with him. So I think that he's definitely the favorite there. But craziness has definitely begun before March. And this past weekend, we saw the top 7 teams lose. What did you think about that, guys? Each one of them lost. But yet, the AP poll had one of them stay in the same spot, and that was Arizona. And I know, Dom, you have your
Two.
feelings about the AP poll. I know you have your feelings about that. But what do you think about the craziness that we had this weekend with those top 7 teams falling?
Well, the top 6 teams all went on the road. Gonzaga, they lost at St. Mary's, who was a ranked team, very good. Arizona lost at Colorado, a team who has been playing really well, got absolutely slapped in the face by Arizona State, forced up, and then rebounded because, of course, they're a much better team than that. And Arizona has only won twice at Colorado since Colorado joined the Pac-12. Little nugget there. Auburn, they lose at Tennessee, and then Kentucky lost at Arkansas. Kansas loses at Baylor. So that's the way it rounded out. Texas Tech also lost at TCU. So it was just teams falling. They fell on the road too. So you can't really read too much into it other than the fact that it was just awesome. I wish I didn't have the call for the ASU game in which they allowed 19 runs and got swept by BYU. Obviously, it's a great opportunity, but it just happened to be on like one of the best college basketball days of all time. It's very telling of what March Madness is going to bring. It's going to be a lot of randomness. It's going to be a lot of upsets, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, those were awesome. I was able to catch a couple of them. And, like obviously, historically, like seeing top 6 teams in the polls dropping like that, that in itself is pretty rare. But like outside of like the Colorado U of A game, like they're losing to other good ranked teams or teams that even if they're not ranked, like they're right there. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it shapes out because we saw, what the AP poll came out with as far as how they view them. But, Selection Sunday is a whole nother animal to see where they see these teams, where they should be based on strength of schedule, based on how impressive their wins are or how unimpressive their losses are. All that quad 1 through 4 stuff, absolutely love it. Fairly big analytical guy, so I love when they kind of crunch the numbers because I know when I'm picking to see who I want to win the tournament, I look heavily into those because it's my best friend in that case. But it was really good college basketball. And I feel like everybody just absolutely loves it for that reason. And that's the unpredictability. And it's just a little sneak peek for what's to come for the tournament because it's only going to get crazier.
Yeah, and I think that you guys know I'm a KU fan, and I was very upset with that game. But I just love all the craziness that's ensued. You've seen so much fluctuation in the AP polls and the rankings throughout the year. And I think that that has been a huge reason why the build-up to this March Madness has been so electric. And also, just the venues this year are going to be incredible for March Madness, knowing that there's lesser restrictions with COVID-19. I believe that going into this March Madness, it's going to really have that feel of pre-COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the craziness, like you mentioned, Dom, it's all just built up into the culmination of what the tournament's going to be.
Yeah, I am just praying, knock on wood, no new variant pops out of the blue.
Please.
Because that could be the only thing that, makes those kind of things go away. So hopefully it won't because college sports in general has some unbelievable atmospheres.
Yeah.
And the tournament is going to bring it. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I agree. But I want to ask you guys a quick question.
Yeah.
Which seeds upset is your favorite? Is it 5-12, 4-13? What's your guys' favorites?
Well, it depends on the question, because like as far as like likelihood, or as far as like I feel like it's different categories. Because obviously somebody's gonna like 11 beating 6, 10 beating 7 over like 13 beating 4. So like
I think it's the 13s beating the 4, just because the
it's the most
11s
satisfying.
the 11s are either at larges or like high majors to end up winning their conference that maybe weren't going to get in the tournament had they lost that game. So like the 11s aren't that exciting. It's fun, but they aren't as exciting. 12-5s are a little bit more predictable, just because the 12s are the top mid-major teams that win their conference tournament. But the 13s, they're like the next level down. There's sometimes teams that make a run in their tournaments late as like mid seeds. It's like, for example, Ohio was the 4 seed in the MAC. They go on a run, win that. They're a 13 seed. Examples like that, those are the fun ones, because those are the ones where you look at their full body of work and you're like, well, I'm not really sure what they're capable of, but they're hot. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think those are fun. And you also get really bad matchups from them. So like some 13s just end up getting blown out of the water. It's very rare to see a 12 seed get blown out of the water, but sometimes when they do win, that makes it even more sweet. And
Yeah.
the 14s are just, you kind of feel bad at that
There's
point.
no bigger dilemma.
That was a horrible voice crack on my end. Oh my gosh.
There's no bigger
That was terrible.
There's no bigger dilemma to me than trying to determine what one of the upsets is going to be for like the actual upsets. Because like
Parker, I remember last year you going through your bracket. You were questioning everything. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, nothing brings out indecisiveness more than March Madness. Like I'm just looking at these games, I'm like, oh, this little school, man, like they killed it all year. Like they're doing great. They're going up against a middle of the pack kind of bigger school. I think they have it. They have the sauce. They can provide it, and they can show up and win. And like it's so crazy because seeing those 15 versus 2s too, like Oral Roberts beating Ohio State, and then almost winning their next game too to go to the Sweet 16. Those things are just awesome. Or like Florida Gulf Coast when they were able to do the same thing as a 15.
Didn't have to do that.
Or why that destroy your bracket?
No, they beat the Aztecs.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. I only remember them winning as the 15.
Everyone remembers them beating Georgetown.
Yeah, of course.
People forget them beating San Diego State.
I do forget that. I'm one of those people. But and then what's the other? Michigan State was the 2 seed and they got knocked out. Who was
Middle
the 15?
Tennessee?
Yeah, Middle Tennessee.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were like the second most They were like the second most picked team to win the championship and got bounced round
it's
one.
Awesome. I just love it. There's nothing better than when like you didn't have that high seed going far, so you're like, okay, damage control. That didn't hurt me the way it hurt everybody else. So like I had them going in the next round anyways. So like it's really fun. So I'm looking forward to those matchups. I want to see what teams have a chance to be that Cinderella story. What teams can maybe go on a little bit of a run, and just stir the pot, make some crazy stuff happen. So I always feel like I pick the wrong upsets, and there's nothing worse than when you see some crazy team destroy your bracket in front of your very own eyes. And you're like, all right, well, at least I have this one going my ways, and you check the score again, and then like your upset pick doesn't happen. You're very sad.
Yeah, nothing hurts more than the one upset that you pick in like all your bracket challenge groups that just doesn't hit.
Mm-hmm.
Like that happens to me every single year.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think one of the craziest upsets for me was Lehigh over Duke all those years ago.
Yeah.
That was absolutely bonkers. So, but I agree with you, Dom. I love the 13s over the 4s. I don't know what it is, but those are just electric. I think it's because, like you said, the 11s just kind of how the seeding works, and then the 12s and the 5s. That's just you can tell because of the strength of those mid-majors that are getting those 12 seeds. So I agree with you on the 13 and 4. That upset, I think, there's just something about it that just stands out. But before we go early tonight, guys, I want to switch to a sport that we don't cover, but I know all of us love, baseball.
Oh, pain.
These
Yeah.
clowns.
Yep. Just above 3 hours left to get a deal done. And then,
No, it's 2.
oh, God, it is. It's
not
more
happening.
like,
Wait, no, it's 1.
it's like an hour, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's an hour, 20
Wow, that
minutes.
was bad math.
For them to
Right
get
there.
a deal done. Sorry, I was thinking Arizona time for some reason, but Eastern time by midnight.
The world revolves
Otherwise-
around us.
Otherwise, regular season games are canceled.
I don't think they're going to cancel games tonight, whether or not.
Do you think they're going to extend the deadline?
Yeah, I think that was just Major League Baseball saying, all right, we're going to make you give in just a little bit or a little bit more than you want. And then, because with negotiations, and I mean, Ryan and I, we talk about this on the Golden Saburo show, 7 to 8 every Wednesday, Mountain Standard Time. Negotiations, the players aren't going to get what they're asking for, and the owners are never going to get what they're asking for. But if you can meet somewhere in the middle on either of the topics, that's where they were going to find themselves, and that's where they're finding themselves progressing. So, I mean, it's a good sign. I mean, I think in the next 48 to 72 hours, we're going to get a deal done.
This conversation just
Yeah.
kind of like the talks between the player association and the owners. It goes nowhere. We just keep repeating the same information. We're being spoon fed, and it's just, I look at the bigger picture with this, and that's what the players, that's what their stance is too, as far as wanting to really set baseball up, set up the minor league guys, set up all these guys coming in to play the game, set themselves up very nicely. I respect them for that. I just think the owners, and not to put all the blame on them, but I want to put a lot of it on them. It's just because I feel like they're killing the game. Baseball is the most stubborn sport. It's so stubborn. The people in it, all the old heads, man, that just have these beliefs and not changing rules and not changing other things to make the game more aggressive and improve the game, like we see in the NBA, the NFL, or even the NHL. They're the one that stands alone, just refuses to do it. And it's killing the audience because fans like us aren't going to go anywhere. We're still going to watch. We still are going to love the game. But it's the casual fans, the general fans out there, which is the biggest population for any sport. Those are the ones that aren't going to remain. Those are the ones that are going to die off with these lockouts. And baseball's had it multiple times over the last couple decades, and it's making them a laughing stock. There's no way around it. It's so embarrassing. So hopefully Manfred and the owners, and even the players too, hopefully they'll be able to make compromise, because it's not going to happen tonight. I mean, this would be massive for Eating Cool Take, but I don't see how it does happen. So they're going to have to push it back and hopefully figure it out. But it's getting ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah, it would take a miracle for a deal to get done tonight. But here's the thing. It is ridiculous and it is crazy that the MLB is trying to actively kill baseball by what has been going on. It was over 40 days into the lockout before any talks happened. But here's the thing. I don't know if they're going to extend the deadline or not, because the owners know the amount of games that they need to hit to where they can find profit and make some money that they want to make. They know that number. But also the players said they are willing to sit out the entire year and not play to make the future look brighter and have a more positive future for baseball. I don't know if they're going to move the deadline back. And it would not shock me if they don't. And that's the scary thing, is that both sides are okay with not playing. Where's the love of the game? Like, I know that the players have their agendas, the owners have their agendas, but come on. Where's the love of the game? The owners don't care about baseball. They care about making money. We've known that. We've understood.
I know about owners not
that.
caring.
Yeah. The owners don't give a darn about the game at all. They just care about making money. Because they're selfish and they're greedy. But where are the players in this? That's where I ask. Where's their love of the sport? Where's their love of the game? And I know they want certain things, but it's ridiculous. I don't get it. I don't get how you can go over 40 days without talking.
Yeah.
Start the lockout. I don't get that.
Or just like with the 2020 season, like they were butting heads, just trying to figure that out and trying to change rules for the runner on second and all that stuff.
Oh, that was terrible.
Like, it's just, there's so many instances where these guys just keep fighting. And it's like, dude, look at the bigger picture. You're killing the sport. It won't be here if you keep doing stuff like this. Like, people won't care. Eventually, even the hardcore fans are going to drift away. At some point, it'll happen. I'd like to think I never would. But, I mean, you can't keep putting your fans through this.
Yeah, it's true. The diehard fans will always love baseball, and that's all of us in here. But there's going to be those casual fans that are like, what is all this? They're just going to stop. Like, they're killing the game. And I don't think they really understand that. Otherwise, this wouldn't have happened the way it has happened. Dom, you have anything else you want to add about it?
I mean, I just don't get why people are like so upset with the owners for like, oh, like where's your love for the game? Like, why don't you care? They don't care.
Exactly.
I've accepted that. It's just frustrating that they try and pinch so many pennies when
Yeah.
we've seen so many times when owners reinvest in the game,
Yeah.
the money gets back. Like you can't, money just doesn't magically come in. So that's what's frustrating to me,
Yeah.
is how petty they are. Because I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. They are trying to kill the game, but they're doing so in a way that's so negligent. That's
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah, because like it's a business for these guys. Like everybody realizes that. Like, yeah, we're fans, but like we're not dumb. Like we realize that there's money to be gained. They're trying to generate revenue, and the way to do that is to have a season to where like I get it. You want to expand the playoffs because that's more money. We get it. TV deals, all this stuff. But like if you have a season, 162 games, you're gonna sell tickets. You're gonna sell merchandise, concession stands. You're going to generate ad revenue. You're going to do well with your broadcast. You're going to do well with your social media that's going to generate revenue. There are so many avenues that they're going to make revenue if they just try and compromise. Just find a fair middle ground, or maybe on the owner's end, maybe a little bit less towards what you want, because you're still going to make a ton of money at the end of the day if you handle this the right way and you have a season and you put this behind you, because it's already embarrassing. You can't make this all disappear all of a sudden. Everybody's going to remember it. You can't just Men in Black and Flash and everybody, it's gone. But, like, you have to be able to make the most of a bad situation. If they don't do that, they're going to suffer. Their pockets will suffer. I mean, they're billionaires, so they're going to be doing fine either way, but they're the ones that stand to lose a lot.
Yeah, and I think that the pettiness, like you said, Dom, is outrageous, and I think that's really the difference in all of this, is how petty the owners are and then how stubborn the players are as well. Both sides are at fault here. It's not just the owners. It's not just the players. Both sides are at fault, but it is ridiculous how that love of the game, it's evident that it's never been there for the owners, but for the players, you don't really see it as much. So, do you guys have anything else you want to add on that?
Nope.
Nope.
Just beating the dead horse.
Exactly. All right, let's get out of here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the 4-3 show. We'll be back next week, Monday night, 8 to 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Have a good one.
Hey guys, this is Jane.